You don't have to believe science all the time. Science doesn't dictate your history. Are there dinosaurs? This is the date, therefore science is correct. We don't find humans, therefore humans didn't exist. A lot of the religious texts say, humans have been here, quite a few years, like a million. Science says 200,000. You can't believe science for everything, because if you do, science becomes the new religion. Now, all the people are starting to get rid of religion because they're saying, religion's stupid, science is works better. No, science has its limitations as well. But we are being pulled into the cult of science, just as everyone was pulled into the cult of Christianity. How many people, Christians, all believed what the Bible believed in, because they didn't have technology to align themselves or to correct themselves. A lot of people. Then science comes along and it says, whoa, don't believe everything that religion says. And now science has become the new religion. But there might be something else that we don't call science, that we don't know a lot about yet, that we will in the future, and we'll look at science and we'll go, whoa, hold on, not all of this is correct. Religion and those textbooks, they are history books. Now, science says, well, they're not history books because, there's a lot of contradiction. Well, there's a lot of contradiction in science as well. Look at virology. You're told at school, right, that science is correct. It's not correct. They just, in the history books, in the textbooks at school, they just pick the scientists that fulfill the narrative. But you can get a lot of scientists that disagree with a lot of things. It just depends who you pick, what you believe. So belief, or what you've decided to believe, creating a perception of reality, there isn't any one perception. Perceptions are all different. So you can have one person taking what science says and another person taking what science says, and the two people can be at loggerheads. They can disagree with each other. Why? Because not all science says the same thing, but you're told in school that it does. Science is becoming the new religion. It's a cult. Yeah, if you don't believe in science, then there's something wrong with you. If you don't believe what science says, so the scientist is becoming the new priest. Yeah, if the scientist says this is correct, you have to believe it, and if you don't believe it, you get ostracized. Now that happened like 600, 700 years ago with religion. If you don't believe in Jesus, we're going to burn you. Yeah, and then you got the Muslims coming along. If you don't believe in Allah, you've got to pay more tax. So these religion and science is the same thing. It's a cult. But when you're in the cult, you can't see it's a cult. So all the people that say, well, science says this. The other thing that I'm starting to hear is what suits the masses, is better than the right of the individual. Now that is utilitarianism, which I think was developed by Bentham and Mills. Now, utilitarianism is teleological, but religion is deontological. And at school, you're not allowed to challenge anything. So, for instance, the textbooks aren't correct. The textbooks keep getting revised, and nobody wants to know. Nobody wants to say anything. Yeah. So Pluto's a planet, then it's not a planet. An atom's the smallest thing, then it's an electron, then it's a quark. And the textbooks get quietly revised each year, and then I suppose the people that learnt the wrong bits of information get updated. But you're always told the textbook is correct. Well, what happens if a child came along and said, I don't believe the textbook? The teacher and all the classmates would ridicule them. And it's the same thing in society. If you disagree with the narrative, you get ridiculed. And especially when you do something as bold as to challenge the very foundations that the information is based on. Yes, there is a lot of truth that comes from the textbooks. Yes, there is a lot of truth that comes from scientists. But just because a lot of truth comes from scientists and textbooks doesn't mean that they're correct 99%. And it's that 1% that, when you don't challenge, can misdirect everything. Everything. Elon Musk said it. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but he said something interesting. He said, look, when you've got a specialist, one of the problems is that you believe the specialist. He said everything must be challenged. So even the specialist can get it wrong. So if you miss out on challenging the specialist and the specialist gets it wrong, you can create billions of pounds worth of problems. So everything must be challenged. This is why I don't like doctors or doctorships or PhDs or doctorates, because the moment you get those letters, you become an authority and you're not to be challenged. The amount of doctors that I've met which are mediocre, the intelligent people get to a stage in their education and they go, I've had enough of this, I want to get on with my life. The academics go, oh, I don't know what to do, I'll just spend a bit more time in university studying because it seems worthwhile. They're the mediocre people. And when they get those letters, they become authority. People start listening and believing them. How many doctors do I disagree with? But you're not allowed to disagree with them because, ooh, they're a doctor. They're a doctor. They're important. They're a doctor. Who defined what a doctor is? Oh, other doctors. So you get challenged and you get decided upon your doctorship from peers who are also doctors. Okay, well, let's go back in history, because a doctor didn't exist. God didn't develop the world and a doctor. So doctors were a creation of humans. So non-doctors created doctors. So the doctorship actually doesn't come from doctors. It comes from non-doctors. And that's something that's got to be remembered. The doctorship and the science, it's not to be believed. And these doctors get very arrogant. When you go to a hospital and you disbelieve the doctor and you challenge them, whoosh, they don't like it. They look down on you like, who are you to challenge me? And you should always look at the doctor and you should say, how arrogant of you to think that you're always right the whole time. You're not all right. You're not always right the whole time. Yeah. The only person that's right the whole time is God. But and priests, because they've got some special divinity, haven't they? And the Pope, the divine right. Was that the divine right of kings? Anyway, the Pope's got something whereby he's infallible. So if a scientist becomes infallible, they're taking on the position of a pope, they're taking on the position of a priest, which means that science is the new religion. The perception of the world defines your energy. So the perception that you have, the greater the perception you have, the more things you can see. Education defines your perception of the world. So it defines what you can see and what you can't. And there are hidden things. There are things on levels, things on delicate levels. So it's important that with education, you make sure that the education doesn't limit you. In some aspects, it can make you better, but in some aspects, it can limit you. And it's important that you're never limited in any aspect, because the aspects that it's limiting you is in the conscious aspects. It's not limiting you in science. It wants you to learn more science so you can build more technology, because the technology is being used to imprison humanity. But the limitations that are coming, it's to do with consciousness, which means that you can't handle the technology and you don't understand what the technology is doing. The more conscious you become, the more things you can see. That's why conscious people see spirits. It's because what you see is a condensed form of vibration. So the physical world are things vibrating at a lower level, and you have your consciousness, and you can see that vibration. When you raise your consciousness, you can see more things. You can see things vibrating at a higher level. And so they don't want you to see things that vibrate at a higher level, because you'll start to change your perception of the world and you talk about it. They want to reduce your vision, your capacity of seeing, into just a physical world. And that way they tell you that, this spiritual world doesn't exist, and you have to believe in this anti-human agenda, because that's all there is. And the solution is the metaverse and the transhuman agenda, which is being run by something non-human. And this comes from education, and all the education and all this establishment, all these specialists, they're all doctors. They're all doctors.